Hi everyone. This is Mark Cheverton, and I wanted to talk with you about another thing about writing that's called story concept and story premise. And the reason why I started this little mini lesson is because I started my new book, which is going to be called, I think, The Giant's Giant. And um, I started writing, and I wrote the first couple chapters, and I got to chapter 4 or so, and then I kind of just fizzled out and I didn't know where it was going. And so I got rid of that stuff and I started again and I got to 3 or 4 chapters and then again just kind of faltered and didn't know where the story was going. And so I decided I'm going to stop and restart everything and start from the very beginning. And the very beginning, when I start a story, is I try to develop a story concept and a story premise. Now, a story concept is kind of like just the bare bones kind of description of what your story is about. Like for the Titanic, the story concept would be a ship sinks in the ocean after hitting an iceberg, and lots of people die, and only a few survive. So that's the concept. Um, but you're not going to say that to somebody to pitch that to get your book published because that's not in itself exciting or interesting. Sorry, a little sick. And so it's just the basic, it's the concept, it's a basic kind of description of what your story is about. It's like that's the skeleton of your creature that you're creating when you're writing this book. And you're going to hang all the muscles and all the tendons and all the organs and everything on that skeleton. And the premise is going to have all of those other things that make that skeleton much more interesting. And so knowing that premise ahead of time when you start writing helps you to have some direction on where you're going to go. It's not an outline. It doesn't tell you everything that's going to be in your story. It just gives you a general direction. It's kind of like, I think of it like a compass. And I can check that and make sure I'm still heading in the right direction when I'm writing. And it gives me a target to shoot for. So, it was a movie with Bruce Willis, Meteor, Armageddon. I don't remember what it was. Anyways, here's another story concept. Um, a meteor is going to hit the Earth, and scientists have to figure out a way to stop it. Okay, not interesting. Still a good concept, but not fundamentally interesting. But the story was really about these crazy, dysfunctional oil drillers who can drill down and find oil anywhere in the world. And these crazy guys that are all misfits that no one would let them work in their company other than Bruce Willis, they're gonna go to this asteroid and destroy it. So having all of that information into your premise makes that story seem much more interesting. So for my Giant's Giant story, my story concept would be a giant is exiled from his clan and he has to figure out how to prove himself so he can gain acceptance again. Again, it gives you the general idea of the story, but you don't read that and you go, wow, that is so awesome. I have to read that book because it's not that interesting. You'll find that doing the story concept can sometimes be difficult. And so there's a sentence that I've heard a lot of authors like to think about. And I'll put this on the screen and then I'll read it. Let's put it right there. Okay. Um, where is it here? There. Once upon a time, there was blank. Every day, blank. One day, blank. Because of that, blank. Because of that, blank. Until finally, blank. So you can use this to kind of start your story. Once upon a time, there was a giant. Every day he got in a fight until he finally got kicked out of his clan. One day, while he was in exile, he learned about something or other. I'm not going to say, I'll tell you later. And because of that, he did this and that until finally he saved the day and he's reaccepted to his clan. So this is another way that you can use to kind of flesh out your story concept, and you can also use it for your story premise as well. With the story premise, I like to think about 6 questions when I'm writing my premise, and I want to make sure that I hit all 6 of these. And so let me put them on the list. It's kind of backwards. There we go. Oh, Um, so when I write my premise, I want to make sure I say who the protagonist is, what is their inner flaw or their inner demons, what drives them, what motivates them, what scares them. What does the protagonist want or need? That's really important. What relationship does the protagonist build throughout the story? You can't just have one person running around. And there's an interesting little story here about the movie Castaway by Tom Hanks. He was stuck on a deserted island all alone. And if he's the only guy on that island, that movie gets really uninteresting really quickly because he has no one to talk to. And as I've said in other lessons, dialogue and action drive the story. And if he's alone and you take that dialogue away, then that's a really weak story. And so he used a volleyball, and he stuck some things in the top so it looked like he had hair, and there was dirt and stuff on the front. It looked like he had a face, and the box said Wilson because that was the brand of the volleyball. And so he called it Wilson, and he would talk to Wilson while he was on the island, and that gave him the dialogue. So it's very important to have secondary characters there so that the main character can form relationships. Well, let's see. Oh, number 5. What obstacles is the protagonist gonna encounter? And number 6, how will the protagonist change throughout the story? Changing is super important. Um, the character's change, that's the character's arc, is why we read the book. That's what makes a book successful, is a character arc. You think about Harry Potter. We liked Harry Potter because you got to see him go from this frail, scared little kid to this wizard who's going to kick butt, and he's going to fight Quirrell, and with, what was it, Voldemort was poking out of his back or something like that. I don't remember. But anyways, Harry fought this guy to protect the Sorcerer's Stone, and it was awesome because you saw Harry go from this meek, afraid little nothing to a guy who's kicking butt with a full-grown wizard. And that change is what made Harry Potter such a successful book. And so that change is really important. Now, in my story, The Giant's Giant, the main character is Stannis Iron Fist. And here's my first attempt. As I was working on this lesson, I kind of worked on my story premise at the same time. Let's put it up here. Okay. Here's my story premise. Stannis Iron Fist, a giant from the Diorite clan, is exiled from his home and sent to Harmony, a school for the incorrigibles and the misfits. At the school, he learns people are being murdered and believe there is a conspiracy within the race of giants, plainsmen, and dryads. Befriended by Roland Flagg, a plainsman boy, and Rael Juniperus, a dryad girl, the 3 outcasts will journey into the wastelands looking for the truth about the conspiracy and possibly stop the Second War of the Races. Okay, so that's better than my concept, which was a giant gets exiled and he wants to go home, right? There's a lot more stuff there. And that seems a lot more interesting. But now let's go through the questions and see if I got them all. Let's see. Who is the protagonist? Yep, Stannis Iron Fist. I said that. What is their inner flaw or inner demons? Oh, I didn't say anything about that. What does the protagonist want or need? I didn't say that either. What relationship does the protagonist have throughout the story? Well, he's going to befriend Rael and Roland, and so we kind of have an idea of who the secondary characters are going to be. I didn't really mention the antagonist, and so I probably should have done that too. And then in the final version, I don't think I mentioned the antagonist either. What obstacle will the protagonist encounter? Nope, didn't do that. How will the protagonist change throughout the story? That's the big one. How will he change? Nope, didn't do that either. So I need to do a better job for that. So here's story premise 2.0. I'm going to stick it right in the middle. This is a big one. Ready? There. Okay, so here's the improved one. I went through and rewrote it a couple of times. Stannis Iron Fist, a giant from the Diorite clan, is exiled from his home and sent to Harmony, a school for incorrigibles and misfits. So far the same. Desperate to be accepted by the other giants, there's his need, Stannis tries to fit in. But being shorter than all the others, he fails miserably and is further isolated and alone. In the story, I'll mention how being tall is a big deal with giants. And Stannis is short. While at the school, there it is. While at the school, Stannis learns people are being murdered and believes that there is a conspiracy within the race of giants, plainsmen, and dryads. Tensions are rising between the races, potentially leading to a war. Stannis, knowing how to detect the murderers, must go to the wastelands to find proof and bring the races back from the brink of war. Well, there's a little echoing, right? I had war and war. If you haven't watched the lesson on echoing, you should. It's very important. It'll make a story seem much better if you eliminate the echoing. Anyways, befriended by Roland Flagg, a plainsman boy, and Rayalo Juniperus, a dryad girl, the three outcasts will journey into the dangerous land of the scavengers. There's the antagonist. They'll journey into the land of the scavengers to find their proof. On the way, they will each learn there is more than what others think of them. They are more than what others think of them, and believe in themselves. And believing in themselves will help them find the truth about the conspiracy and hopefully stop the second war of the races. So I think I answered all the questions this time. In the process of doing this, I realized that it'd be more interesting if people like the leader of the giants, who's called the Colossus, the first Colossus, second Colossus, maybe he's murdered, and Stannis knows who was accused, and there was something funny about him before he got exiled, and he knows something. And some other people were murdered, and instead of it being like a bunch of people attacking each other, maybe there's this mysterious murders, and the other races are blaming each other. And so I thought, while I was working on the premise, I realized that would be a much more interesting story than just having a bunch of people battling each other. Having it more of a mystery type thing. And working on the premise helped me to figure that out. So that was really, really helpful. The other thing is, if I have people being murdered, then if a publisher likes this book and they say, hey, let's make this a series and let's add another one, now I can go from people being murdered to groups of people attacking each other. I can escalate the level of tension from a book 1 to a book 2, which you always want to escalate tension, as you know from my other little lessons. So anyways, I hope this helps. I strongly encourage you, when you're working on a new story, think about the story's concept. And I always start with a movie that I know. Harry Potter is told he's a wizard, and he goes to a wizarding school. That's the concept, right? And then from there, you think about what the premise is, and maybe you should take apart movies you like and try to decide what the premise is for these movies. And the more you dissect other movies or other books, it'll help you dissect your own. I hope this helps your story writing. Keep writing. Of course, watch out for creepers. And good luck. Bye.